My name is Ethan, and I'm a junior graphic designer at this multinational company. This morning during my shift, I was in the elevator when my boss, Kieran Matthews, stepped inside. He's the company's youngest CEO, only 28 years old, with perfectly styled black hair, a sharp jawline, and that intimidating aura that always makes me nervous. I was carrying my coffee when the elevator suddenly jerked. My hand slipped, and the entire hot coffee went straight onto his crisp white shirt. The brown stain spread across his chest. The fabric became see-through, and I could see his toned muscles underneath. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Matthews. I'll pay for dry cleaning. I was stuttering badly, but he just stared at me, something strange flickering in his gray eyes. "Dry cleaning?" he said slowly. "No, Ethan. You spilled it, you clean it." The elevator doors opened and he grabbed my hand, pulling me into his private office. He locked the door and stood in front of me. "Clean it. Right now. Use your hands." "But sir, I don't understand." "Remove the stain. Touch by touch." His voice was low and commanding. My heart was racing. I grabbed some wet tissues and approached his shirt. The moment I pressed the tissue against his chest, he took a sharp breath. The fabric had become transparent from the coffee, and I could feel the warmth of his skin through my fingers. "Slower," he whispered. "Make sure you get every drop." My face was burning. This wasn't a normal boss-employee situation anymore. I was carefully making circular motions on his shirt, trying to remove the coffee stains, but with every touch he was quietly moaning. The coffee had soaked through completely, creating dark patches that clung to his muscled chest. I tried to be professional, dabbing at the stains with tissue, but my hands were shaking. Each time my fingers accidentally brushed against his skin through the wet fabric, he would inhale sharply. "You're not getting it all," he said, his voice deeper than usual. "Press harder." I looked up at his face and his gray eyes were fixed on mine with an intensity that made my stomach flip. This wasn't about the coffee anymore. The way he was looking at me, the way his breathing had changed, everything felt charged with tension. "Mr. Matthews, maybe we should call someone else." "Or, no." His hand covered mine, pressing it firmly against his chest. "I want you to finish what you started." I could feel his heartbeat beneath my palm, rapid and strong. The coffee stain was spreading rather than disappearing, making the situation worse, but neither of us seemed to care about that anymore. "Ethan," his voice had become husky. "Do you know what you're doing to me?" I froze. There was desire burning in his eyes, and I realized this had stopped being about coffee cleaning entirely. The way he said my name, the way his chest rose and fell under my touch, everything about this moment felt dangerous and thrilling. My mind was racing. This was my boss, the CEO of the entire company. I'd worked here for 6 months, always admiring him from afar, always getting nervous when he was near. I'd fantasized about him late at night, imagining what it would be like to be close to him like this. But I never thought it could actually happen. I think I should go," I whispered, but I didn't move my hand away. "Should you?" He stepped closer, eliminating any remaining space between us. His free hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing across my lower lip. "Because I've been watching you, Ethan. The way you work late, how dedicated you are, how you bite your lip when you're concentrating. You notice that?" "I notice everything about you." His voice was barely above a whisper now. "I've been trying to find an excuse to get you alone like this." My breath caught. An excuse? A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. Maybe the elevator jerk wasn't entirely accidental. You planned this?" "Not exactly planned, but when the opportunity presented itself," he trailed off, his eyes dropping to my lips. The coffee-stained shirt was forgotten now. His thumb was still tracing my lip, and I found myself leaning into his touch without thinking. 6 months of suppressed attraction, of stolen glances during meetings, of dreams I never thought could come true. All of it was culminating in this moment. "Tell me to stop," he said softly. "Tell me this is inappropriate, that we should maintain professional boundaries. Tell me anything except that you want this too." But I couldn't, because I did want this. I'd wanted it since my first day when he'd welcomed me to the team with that devastating smile. I'd wanted it every time he leaned over my desk to check my work, his cologne filling my senses. I'd wanted it during every late-night fantasy when I imagined what it would be like to have his attention, his touch, his desire. I can't tell you to stop, I admitted, my voice barely audible. His smile widened and suddenly he grabbed my hand and pressed it firmly against his chest. Feel that, he said. My heartbeat. It's racing because of you. I gulped. His heart was indeed pounding, matching the frantic rhythm of my own. The coffee stain had created a map of dark patches across his white shirt, and underneath, I could feel the heat and strength of his body. Ethan, he said, his voice rough with desire. I need you to understand something. Once we cross this line, there's no going back. Things between us will never be the same. I looked into his eyes and saw sincerity mixed with raw want. This wasn't just lust, there was something deeper there, something that made my chest tight with emotion. I know, I said, and I want to cross it. He groaned softly, his forehead dropping to rest against mine. You have no idea what you do to me. Walking around this office, being brilliant and beautiful and completely oblivious to how much I want you. I'm not oblivious, I whispered. I've wanted you too, for months. That admission seemed to break something in him. His control slipped and I could see the raw hunger in his expression. He was about to kiss me. I could feel it in the way his body tensed, the way his grip on me tightened. But just as his lips were about to touch mine, there was a sharp knock on the office door. Mr. Matthews, board meeting in 5 minutes. His secretary's voice called out. We both froze, the spell broken. Reality came crashing back. We were in his office during work hours, and I was pressed against my boss with his coffee-stained shirt clinging to his chest. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. When he opened them again, the professional mask was sliding back into place, but the desire was still there, simmering just beneath the surface. We'll continue this later, he said quietly, his voice still rough. This conversation is far from over, Ethan. This conversation is far from over, Kieran had said, and those words echoed in my mind through the entire board meeting. I watched from my desk as he emerged from the conference room 2 hours later, his coffee-stained shirt now covered by his suit jacket, but I could still see the evidence of our encounter underneath. He caught my eye across the office floor and gave me a look that made my stomach flip. Then he was walking toward me, his stride confident and purposeful. Ethan, he said when he reached my desk, his voice carefully professional despite the intensity in his gray eyes. I need you to come to my office. We have some cleaning up to do. I followed him, my heart pounding. He closed the door behind us and immediately locked it, the soft click echoing in the sudden silence. The shirt is completely ruined, he said, looking down at the coffee stains that had only gotten worse during the meeting. We need to handle this properly. Handle this? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer and I could smell his cologne mixed with the lingering scent of coffee. Since the shirt is ruined anyway, help me take it off. My breath caught in my throat. Sir, I think this has gone too far. Has it? He stepped even closer, the coffee-stained shirt still clinging to his torso. You created this mess, Ethan. The least you can do is help me fix it. There was a double meaning in his words, and I knew this wasn't just about the shirt anymore. He moved toward the small washroom attached to his office, and I followed as if in a trance. Once inside the small space, he closed the door and turned to face me. I can't concentrate on anything, he said, his professional facade finally dropping. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? Sitting in that boardroom, trying to focus on quarterly reports while all I could think about was your hands on me. My mouth went dry. Mr. Matthews. Kieran, he corrected. In here it's just Kieran. Slowly, deliberately, he began unbuttoning his shirt. I watched mesmerized as each button revealed more of his chest. The coffee stains had created dark patches that clung to his skin, and I could see the defined muscles I'd only felt through the fabric before. I can't reach the back, he said, though I suspected it was a lie. He turned around, presenting his broad shoulders to me. Help me. My hands were trembling as I reached for his shoulders, sliding the ruined shirt off. His skin was warm and smooth under my fingertips, and I heard him inhale sharply at the contact. When he turned to face me again, I was stunned by the sight of his bare torso. Perfectly sculpted abs, broad shoulders and coffee stains, still visible on his skin where the liquid had soaked through. Now clean this too, he said, handing me a towel and pointing to the coffee drops on his chest. I moved the towel gently across his skin, trying to wipe away the residue. With every touch, he gasped softly, his eyes watching me with burning intensity. "You know," he said, his voice rough, "I've been thinking about you for months. Way before today's accident." I looked up at him in surprise. "You have?" "Every day. The way you work late to perfect your projects. How you get that little crease between your eyebrows when you're concentrating. The way you always seem to find excuses to walk past my office." "I don't—" I started to protest, but he cut me off with a knowing smile. "Don't lie to me, Ethan. I notice everything about you. How you get nervous when I'm near during meetings. How you blush when I compliment your work. How you look at me when you think I'm not watching." My face burned because he was right. I had been finding excuses to walk past his office. I did get nervous around him, and I definitely looked at him when I thought he wasn't paying attention. "Ethan," he said suddenly, lifting my chin with his finger. "How long have you been working under me?" "6 months, sir," I managed to say. "And in these 6 months have you ever thought about me? Outside of work?" The question shocked me. The truth was that I thought about him every night. His commanding voice, his intense stare, his presence that made me feel weak and excited at the same time. I shouldn't answer that," I whispered. He smirked. "That's an answer in itself." He stepped closer, eliminating any space between us. "Because I've been thinking about you too, Ethan. More than I should. More than is professional or appropriate." I could feel his warm breath on my face. "Mr. Matthews." "Kieran," he corrected again, his voice firm but gentle. "When we're alone like this, it's Kieran. This isn't professional," I said weakly, even as my body responded to his nearness. "Fuck professionalism," he whispered, his thumb tracing my lower lip. "Tell me, Ethan, do you want me? 'Cause I'm tired of pretending I don't want you." My whole body felt electric. Could I admit that I'd been craving him for months? That I'd fantasized about moments exactly like this one? I started, then stopped, looking into his intense gray eyes. "Yes," I finally whispered. "I want you." His lips curved into a satisfied smile. "Good. Because I've been wanting you since your first day. When you walked into that conference room, nervous and eager and so damn beautiful, I knew I was in trouble." He cupped my face with both hands, his thumbs brushing across my cheekbones. "But I need to know you're sure about this. I'm your boss, Ethan. There's a power dynamic here that we can't ignore. If you feel pressured or uncomfortable, tell me now." His honesty touched me. Even in his desire, he was thinking about my comfort, my choice. "I don't feel pressured, Kieran. I feel wanted. For the first time in my life, I feel truly wanted." "You are wanted," he said softly. "More than you know. More than I've ever wanted anyone." He leaned closer, his lips almost touching mine. "Once we do this, everything changes. We can't go back to just being boss and employee. Are you ready for that?" I looked into his eyes and saw sincerity mixed with raw desire. This wasn't just lust. There was something deeper, something that made my heart race for reasons beyond physical attraction. "I'm ready," I breathed. He groaned softly, his forehead resting against mine. "You have no idea how long I've waited to hear you say that." Just as he was about to kiss me, just as his lips were a breath away from mine, his office phone rang loudly, shattering the intimate moment. We both froze, reality crashing back. He reluctantly stepped away and answered the phone. "Mr. Matthews, the investors are here early for the 4 p.m. meeting." His secretary's panicked voice came through. Kieran closed his eyes in frustration, then looked at me with regret and promise in equal measure. "This isn't over, Ethan," he said quietly, his voice still rough with desire. "Meet me tonight. My penthouse, 8 p.m. He wrote his address on a business card and handed it to me. "We need privacy for what comes next." At 8 p.m. sharp, I stood outside Kieran's penthouse, his business card with the address clutched in my sweaty palm. My heart was hammering against my ribs. What was I doing? Everything that had happened in his office felt like a dream, but the address in my hand proved it was real. I almost turned around 3 times before finally pressing the doorbell. The sound echoed through what I imagined was an expensive apartment, and within seconds the door opened. Kieran stood there in casual clothes, a black t-shirt and dark jeans. It was the first time I'd ever seen him out of a suit, and somehow he looked even more devastating. The t-shirt hugged his chest, and I could see the defined muscles I'd felt through his coffee-stained shirt earlier. "You came?" he said, relief evident in his voice. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted honestly, stepping into his apartment. The penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights, and everything was elegant and expensive, just like him. Modern furniture, abstract art on the walls, and a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. "Drink?" he offered, gesturing toward a well-stocked bar. I shook my head. "Kieran, what happened in your office today? What is this? What are we doing?" He moved closer, his expression becoming serious. "That's what I need to talk to you about." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed nervous, which was strange for someone usually so composed. "Ethan, I need you to understand something. This isn't just physical attraction for me. I've been watching you for months. Your dedication, how you stay late perfecting projects, the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating on something difficult." I was surprised. "You really notice all that?" "I notice everything about you," he said, taking my hand. "The way you always organize your desk before leaving, how you bring extra coffee for the interns, the way you light up when you solve a problem. I've been falling for you bit by bit, and I didn't know what to do about it." "Falling for me?" The words made my chest tight. "Completely." He squeezed my hand. "But I'm your boss. I needed to be sure you felt something too before I could risk this. And now I can't stop thinking about how your hands felt on my skin today," he said honestly, his voice rough. "But only if you want this too. Really want it, not because you feel obligated or pressured." I stepped closer to him, closing the distance between us. "I want this, Kieran. I want you. I've wanted you since my first day when you welcomed me to the team and smiled at me like I actually mattered." He groaned softly, his free hand coming up to cup my face. "You do matter, more than you know." This time, there was no interruption. He leaned down and kissed me softly, tentatively giving me the chance to pull away if I wanted to. But I didn't want to. I'd never wanted anything less. I kissed him back, pouring months of suppressed longing into the contact. His lips were warm and firm, and when I parted my mouth slightly, he deepened the kiss with a soft sound of pleasure. All the tension from the office, all the interrupted moments, all the stolen glances, everything culminated in this kiss. It was gentle but passionate, tender but hungry. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "I've imagined this so many times," I whispered against his lips. "Have you?" He smiled, his thumb brushing across my cheek. "Tell me." I blushed but decided to be honest. Late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd think about what it would be like to be close to you like this. To have your attention, your touch, and now you have it, he murmured, pressing soft kisses along my jaw. "All of it. My attention, my touch, my desire, everything." He led me to the living room, where we sat on his expensive leather couch. The city lights twinkled beyond the windows, creating a romantic backdrop I'd never dreamed of. "Can I ask you something?" I said as he pulled me closer. "Anything." Was the elevator really an accident? He looked sheepish for a moment. The elevator jerk was real. But I may have deliberately positioned myself where I did. And I may have been hoping for an excuse to spend time alone with you. "You orchestrated getting coffee spilled on you?" "Not exactly orchestrated. But when the opportunity presented itself," he grinned, looking younger and less intimidating than his usual CEO persona. "I couldn't let it pass." I shook my head in amazement. "You're incredible. Incredibly gone for you," he corrected, pulling me onto his lap so I was straddling him. "Do you have any idea what you do to me? Walking around the office being brilliant and beautiful and completely oblivious to how much I want you." I wasn't completely oblivious, I confessed, my hands resting on his chest. "I just never thought someone like you could want someone like me." "Someone like me?" He frowned. "What does that mean?" "Successful, confident, gorgeous. You could have anyone." "I don't want anyone," he said firmly, his hands settling on my waist. "I want you. Your intelligence, your creativity, your kindness. The way you make me laugh during boring meetings with your little eye rolls. The way you always remember everyone's coffee orders. The way you make me feel like a better person just by being near you." His words made my heart swell with emotion. I wasn't prepared for. This wasn't just physical, he really saw me in a way no one ever had. Kieran, I whispered, overwhelmed. I know it's complicated, he continued. I know there will be challenges, but I want to try. If you do, I want to see where this goes. Instead of answering with words, I kissed him again, harder this time, with more certainty. He responded immediately, his arms tightening around me, pulling me closer against his chest. The kiss grew more intense, more desperate. Months of suppressed attraction poured out between us. His hands tangled in my hair and I could feel his heart racing beneath my palms. When we broke apart this time, we were both breathing heavily, and the air between us was charged with electricity. Stay, he whispered against my lips. Stay the night. I want to worship every inch of you, show you how much you mean to me. I looked into his gray eyes and saw desire. Yes, but also tenderness and something deeper, something that looked like love. Yes, I breathed. I want to stay. He stood up, lifting me easily, and carried me toward what I assumed was his bedroom. I want to make this perfect for you, he said. I want tonight to be something you'll never forget. As he laid me gently on his bed and began to kiss me again, I knew he was right. This was a night I would never forget. The night everything changed. The night I stopped being just an employee and became something infinitely more precious to the man I was falling in love with. The city lights continued to twinkle outside his windows, but inside his bedroom we created our own constellation of touches, kisses, and whispered promises that would bind us together far beyond this single perfect night. The next morning at the office, everything felt different. The moment I walked through those glass doors, memories of last night flooded back. Kieran's hands on my skin, his whispered confessions, the way he'd held me like I was something precious. I found myself blushing just thinking about it, and I hadn't even seen him yet. When I did see him, standing near the elevator in his perfectly pressed suit, my heart did that familiar flip. He looked up and our eyes met across the lobby. For just a moment, his professional mask slipped, and I saw the warmth there, the memory of last night reflected in his gray eyes. Then someone called his name and the CEO persona was back in place. During the morning team meeting, Kieran maintained his professional demeanor flawlessly. He discussed quarterly projections and upcoming deadlines with his usual commanding presence. But occasionally, his eyes would find mine across the conference table, and there would be the smallest hint of a smile, a look that said, I know what you're thinking about, and I'm thinking about it too. The Morrison project needs revision, he announced formally, his voice giving nothing away. Ethan, please see me after this to discuss the changes needed. My colleagues seemed normal, chatting about their weekend plans and complaining about the coffee machine being broken again. But I was nervous. Could they tell something had changed? Did I look different somehow? I felt like everyone could see right through me, like they'd know just by looking that I'd spent the night in the CEO's bed. After the meeting ended, I gathered my papers with shaking hands and made my way to his office. The walk felt endless, every step echoing in my ears. I knocked softly on his door. Come in, came his voice from inside. I stepped through the doorway and closed the door behind me, the soft click sounding incredibly loud in the suddenly charged atmosphere. The moment the door closed, Kieran transformed completely. The professional mask dropped away and he was across the room in 3 quick strides. I couldn't stop thinking about you all morning, he whispered, pulling me close for a quick but intense kiss. Sitting in that meeting, pretending to care about budget reports when all I could think about was how you felt in my arms. Kieran, someone might see, I protested weakly, even as I melted into his touch. I don't care, he growled softly, his hands framing my face. Last night was incredible. I want more nights like that. I want all your nights. So do I admitted, my resolve crumbling. But we need to be careful here. This is still your office. You're still my boss. Not here, he said, pressing his forehead against mine. When it's just us like this, I'm just Kieran and you're just Ethan. Nothing else matters. The next few weeks were perfect. We developed a routine that felt natural despite its complications. During office hours, we maintained complete professionalism. Kieran was the demanding but fair CEO, and I was the dedicated graphic designer who stayed late and produced exceptional work. But after 5 o'clock, we belonged to each other. He took me to fancy restaurants where he'd order wine I couldn't pronounce and tell me stories about his college days. We went to movies where we'd hold hands in the dark like teenagers. He'd pick me up for long drives along the coast, the city lights fading behind us as we talked about everything and nothing. I was falling deeper for him every day, not just for the passionate lover who whispered my name in the darkness, but for the man who remembered that I preferred my coffee with 2 sugars, who listened intently when I talked about my design ideas, who made me laugh with his dry observations about office politics. But our carefully constructed happiness was short-lived. One afternoon, I was walking past the HR department when I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear Margaret, the HR director, talking to someone on the phone. "Have you noticed Ethan Parker's getting all the good assignments lately?" she was saying, her voice carrying clearly through the gap. I froze, pressing myself against the wall. "Yeah, very suspicious," came another voice. "Lisa from accounting. Ever since that coffee incident with Mr. Matthews. Suddenly he's the golden boy around here. Maybe he's sleeping his way up," Margaret said with a laugh that made my stomach churn. "These young guys, you know how they are. Ambitious." My heart sank like a stone. I felt sick. Physically sick. All my worst fears were coming true. People were noticing and they were drawing exactly the conclusions I'd been terrified they would. I stumbled back to my desk, my mind racing. Everything I'd worked for, all my late nights and careful attention to detail, reduced to office gossip about sleeping my way to success. That evening, when Kieran picked me up for dinner, I told him everything. We were sitting in his car outside an upscale Italian restaurant. But suddenly I had no appetite. "Fuck what they think," he said angrily after I'd repeated the conversation word for word. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. "You earned every project through talent. I've seen your work, it's exceptional. But they don't see it that way, Kieran," I said, frustration and hurt making my voice sharp. "They think I'm using you for career advancement. They think I'm just some opportunistic—" "Stop," he cut me off. "You know that's not true. I know that's not true. That's all that matters. But it matters to me." I was getting more upset by the minute. I worked hard for 6 months before we even got together. 6 months of staying late, of perfecting every design, of proving myself, and now they think I'm just your trophy boyfriend. The hurt that flashed across his face made me immediately regret my words, but I couldn't take them back. "Is that what you think you are to me?" he asked quietly. "A trophy?" "No," I said quickly. "I know that's not what you think, but that's what they think, and I can't stand it." We sat in silence for a long moment, the tension thick between us. Finally Kieran spoke. "Then maybe," he said thoughtfully, "we should go public. Officially announce our relationship. No more hiding, no more whispers behind backs. Let them see that this is real, that we're committed to each other." I stared at him in shock. "Kieran, that's crazy. Company policies exist for a reason. What about the board of directors? What about—" "I'll handle the policies," he interrupted. "Board, investors, whoever has a problem with it. I don't care. I'm tired of hiding how much you mean to me. I'm tired of pretending that what we have isn't the most important thing in my life." His passionate declaration should have made me happy, but instead it terrified me. Going public meant no going back. It meant facing everyone's judgment directly. Meant dealing with the whispers and speculation openly instead of hiding from them. "I need time to think about this," I finally said. He nodded reluctantly, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. "Take all the time you need. But Ethan, please don't let their ignorance ruin what we have. Don't let them make you doubt us." The drive back to my apartment was quiet, both of us lost in our own thoughts. When he walked me to my door, he kissed me goodbye with a desperation that suggested he was afraid it might be the last time. "I love you," he whispered against my lips. It was the first time either of us had said the words out loud, and they hung in the air between us like a promise and a question all at once. "I love you too," I whispered back. Because it was true, because despite everything, despite my fears and the complications, I was completely, irrevocably in love with him. But as I watched him drive away, I wondered if love would be enough to overcome the obstacles we were facing. The office whispers were just the beginning. If we went public, if we made this official, What other challenges would we have to face? I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what the right choice was. My heart said to fight for us, to let the world see how much we meant to each other. But my head was full of doubts, full of fears about my career, my reputation, our future. By morning, I still didn't have answers, but I knew that whatever decision I made would change everything, and there would be no going back. Even after taking time to think, I remained confused and conflicted. Kieran's proposal to go public echoed constantly in my mind, but every time I tried to imagine it, my stomach would clench with anxiety. What would people say? How would it affect my career? How would it affect his? 1 week later, the situation became dramatically worse. I was walking past the HR department, trying to shake off the memory of the conversation I'd overheard the week before, when I heard Margaret's voice again. This time, her door was completely closed, but her voice was loud enough that I could make out most of what she was saying. We need to investigate Ethan Parker's recent promotions and project assignments, she was saying to someone on the phone. We've received multiple complaints about potential favoritism, and frankly, the timing is suspicious. My stomach dropped to my feet. Investigation. The word echoed in my head like a death sentence. An HR investigation into favoritism could end my career before it even really began. And if they started digging, if they started asking the right questions to the right people, I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands and texted Kieran, "We need to talk. Urgently. HR issue." His response came back within 30 seconds. My office. Now. I practically ran through the corridors, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. I knocked on his door and slipped inside, closing it behind me. "They're investigating me," I blurted out before he could even ask what was wrong. "Margaret, the HR director, she's investigating my promotions and assignments. She thinks there's favoritism involved." Kieran's expression darkened immediately. He stood up from behind his desk, his jaw set in that determined way I'd come to know meant he was ready for a fight. "Let them investigate," he said firmly. "Your work speaks for itself. Every project you've handled has been exemplary. Every deadline met. Every client satisfied. They won't find anything questionable because there isn't anything questionable." "But Kieran, what if they find out about us?" The panic in my voice was clear even to me. "What if someone saw us together outside of work? What if they start asking questions about why you specifically requested me for certain projects? Then we tell them the truth," he interrupted, his voice steady and sure. "That we're in love, that our personal relationship doesn't affect our professional judgment, and that anyone who has a problem with it can find somewhere else to work. You can't just fire people for having opinions," I protested. "Watch me," he said with such determination that I almost believed he'd do it. But I had already made my decision. The investigation was the final straw. The thing that pushed me over the edge from fear into action. "I'm requesting a transfer, Kieran, to a different department." His face went completely pale. For a moment he just stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. "What?" he said finally. "No, Ethan. That's exactly what they want. They want to separate us. Make you feel like you have to choose between your career and—" "It's what I want," I lied, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "Space. Distance. To prove I can succeed without this." "Without us, you mean?" he said, and his voice was suddenly cold, distant. I nodded, though it felt like my heart was breaking with the movement. "Fine," he said, turning away from me to stare out his office window. "If that's what you want, I won't stop you." The coldness in his voice was like a physical blow. I wanted to take it back, to tell him I didn't mean it, that I was just scared, but the words wouldn't come. The next day, I submitted my transfer application to the marketing department. Jessica Chen, the marketing head, welcomed me warmly when she called to discuss the position. "Fresh start, Ethan," she said with a genuine smile. "Perfect timing, we need someone with your skills on our campaign team." But a fresh start felt impossible when Kieran was everywhere. The company wasn't that big, and avoiding him completely was impossible. There were awkward encounters in the elevator where we'd stand on opposite sides, staring at the floor numbers like they held the secrets of the universe. In the cafeteria, I'd catch glimpses of him across the room, looking as miserable as I felt. In the corridors, he would try to catch my eye while I determinedly looked anywhere but at him. 2 weeks into my new position in marketing, I was working late one evening, trying to lose myself in a campaign design, when I heard footsteps approaching my desk. I looked up, expecting to see the security guard making his rounds, but instead found Kieran standing there. He looked terrible. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usually immaculate appearance was slightly disheveled. His tie was loosened, his hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it, and there was a weariness about him that made my chest ache. "We need to talk, Ethan," he said quietly. "There's nothing to talk about, Mr. Matthews," I replied formally, turning back to my computer screen. "Don't," he warned, and there was pain in his voice. "Don't, Mr. Matthews, me. Not after everything we've been through." I kept my eyes fixed on the screen, pretending to be absorbed in the font choices for an advertising headline, but the words blurred together as tears threatened to spill over. He walked around my desk and forcefully turned my chair to face him. "Look at me, damn it." When I finally met his eyes, I could see how broken he looked. The confident, commanding CEO was gone, replaced by someone who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "I miss you," he said simply. "Every single day feels incomplete without you. I can't concentrate on work. I can't sleep. I can barely eat. Everything reminds me of you." My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. "Kieran, please don't make this harder than it already is." "Harder?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it, only bitterness. "You think this is hard for you? I can barely function. Food tastes like nothing. Work feels meaningless. And every morning I wake up reaching for you only to remember that you chose your career over us." "I didn't choose my career over us," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "Then what did you choose?" he demanded. "Because from where I'm sitting it looks like you chose other people's opinions over what we had together." "I miss you too," I admitted, my voice breaking. "Every day, but I can't go back to people thinking that I'm only successful because I'm sleeping with you." "Then let's go public," he said suddenly, leaning forward with renewed intensity. "Properly. Officially. Let everyone know you're mine and I'm yours. No more speculation. No more whispers. Just the truth." I stared at him, seeing the desperation and hope warring in his expression. "Kieran, I'll handle everything," he continued, his words coming faster now, like he was afraid I'd cut him off again. "The board, the policies, the investors. I'll make it work. I'll make them understand that what we have is real and important and worth protecting." "What if they make you choose?" I asked. "Between me and the company? Then I choose you," he said without hesitation. "Every time I choose you." The conviction in his voice made my heart skip a beat. "You'd really risk everything? Your position? Your company? Everything you've worked for?" "Ethan," he said, reaching out to cup my face with trembling hands. "Don't you understand? You are everything I've worked for. The company, the success, the money. None of it means anything if I can't share it with you." Tears were streaming down my face now, and I couldn't stop them. "I'm scared," I whispered. "I know," he said, wiping away my tears with his thumbs. "I'm scared too, but I'm more scared of losing you completely. I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been if I'd just been brave enough to fight for us." I closed my eyes, leaning into his touch. Everything in me wanted to say yes, to throw caution to the wind and trust that love would be enough to overcome whatever obstacles we faced. "I need more time," I said finally, hating myself for the disappointment that flashed across his face. He dropped his hands and stepped back. "How much time, Ethan? Because I don't know how much longer I can do this. Seeing you every day, wanting you every day, and not being able to have you. It's killing me." "1 week," I said. "Give me 1 more week to figure this out." He nodded slowly. "1 week, but please think about us. Think about how good we were together, how happy we made each other. Don't let fear win." 1 week, Kieran had said, and those words echoed in my mind constantly. I had 7 days to make a decision that would determine the rest of our lives. 7 days to choose between the safety of hiding and the risk of going public with our relationship. The weight of the choice was crushing. On one hand, I had never been happier than during those weeks when Kieran and I were together. He made me feel valued, cherished, like I was the most important person in his world. On the other hand, the fear of judgment, of having my professional achievements questioned, of being seen as someone who slept his way to success, was paralyzing. Kieran, you're not thinking clearly, I had protested when he first suggested going public. Board of directors, company policies, investor relations. What about all of that? I'll handle everything, he had replied with such fierce determination. Board meetings, policy changes, investor concerns. I don't care about any of it. I only care about you. His desperation was both touching and terrifying. But what if they force you to choose between me and the company? Then I choose you, he had said without a moment's hesitation. Every single time, the memory of those words made my chest tight with emotion. You'd really risk everything? Your career, your company, everything you've built? Ethan, he had said, gently cupping my face. You are everything to me. The company, the career, the success. None of it means anything without you. Now 3 days into my week of thinking, I was no closer to a decision. I walked through my days like a zombie, going through the motions of work and life while my mind churned endlessly over the same questions. Was I being a coward? Was I letting fear destroy the best thing that had ever happened to me? Or was I being practical, protecting both of us from a scandal that could ruin our careers? Jessica, my new supervisor in marketing, noticed my distraction during our weekly check-in meeting. You seem miles away lately, she observed, closing her laptop and giving me her full attention. Everything okay? Just personal stuff, I said vaguely, not meeting her eyes. She studied me for a long moment, then smiled knowingly. Boy troubles? I was surprised by her perceptiveness. Something like that, I admitted. Want some advice from someone who's been around the corporate world for 15 years? She asked, leaning back in her chair. I nodded, desperate for any guidance. Life advice from someone older, she said seriously. Fear is the worst reason to lose someone you love. I've seen too many people let good relationships slip away because they were worried about what others might think or say. If he's worth it, fight for it. Her words hit me like a physical blow. Fight for it. When was the last time I had fought for anything I really wanted? I had always been the type to play it safe, to color inside the lines, to avoid conflict, but maybe some things were worth fighting for. What if it affects my career? I asked quietly. What if it doesn't? She countered. What if the people who matter are more supportive than you think? And what if the people who aren't supportive aren't worth worrying about anyway? That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Jessica's words playing on repeat in my mind. I thought about all the moments Kieran and I had shared, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the room, the way he remembered small details about my preferences, the way he made me laugh even when I was stressed about work. I thought about how empty these past weeks had felt without him, how nothing seemed to have color or meaning anymore. By Friday evening, I had made my decision. I pulled out my phone and texted him. Meet me at the rooftop. 8 p.m. We need to finish this conversation. The company building's rooftop had become our secret refuge during those perfect weeks when we were together. It was quiet, private, with a beautiful view of the city lights. When I arrived, Kieran was already there, standing at the edge looking out over the city. Even from behind I could see the tension in his shoulders, the anxiety in his posture. Ethan, he said when he heard my footsteps turning around. His face was carefully neutral, but I could see the hope and fear warring in his eyes. I want to try, I said before he could say anything else. Public relationship, official announcement, whatever it takes. I want to try. The transformation in his expression was immediate and complete. Relief washed over his face like a sunrise, and for a moment he just stared at me like he couldn't quite believe what he'd heard. You mean it? He asked, taking a step toward me. Really? I'm terrified, I admitted honestly, meeting him halfway. I'm absolutely terrified of what people will say, of how it might affect both our careers, of all the complications that are going to come with this. But I'm more terrified of living without you. He pulled me into his arms and kissed me with a passion that spoke of weeks of separation and longing. I promise I'll protect you from everything, he whispered against my lips. Whatever comes, whatever people say, whatever challenges we face, I'll be right there with you. We'll face it together, I corrected him, because I was done hiding, done letting fear make decisions for me. Together, he agreed and kissed me again. Monday morning arrived with all the weight of inevitability. Kieran had called a company-wide meeting for 10 a.m. And as I sat in the conference room with all my colleagues, I was a nervous wreck. My palms were sweating, my heart was pounding, and I was sure everyone could see how anxious I was. Kieran entered the room with his usual commanding presence. But when his eyes found mine across the room, he gave me the smallest, most reassuring smile. "Thank you all for coming," he began in his professional CEO voice. "I have a personal announcement to make that I felt you should all hear directly from me." The room was completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. "I'm in a committed relationship with Ethan Parker from our marketing department," he said clearly and confidently. "We've maintained complete professionalism in our work environment, and we will continue to do so. However, I want to be transparent with all of you about this relationship. Any harassment, discrimination, or inappropriate behavior regarding this announcement will result in immediate disciplinary action." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. Then there were murmurs, some surprised gasps, some supportive nods, some uncomfortable shifting in seats. The reactions were as mixed as I'd expected, but nobody seemed openly hostile. After the meeting, I was surprised by how many people approached me with positive reactions. "It's about time you two stopped pretending," Jessica said with a wink. "Half the office already suspected something was going on." "You guys are cute together," added Marcus from IT. "I saw you leaving together a few times and wondered when you'd make it official." There were some negative reactions too. Cold shoulders, whispered conversations that stopped when I walked by. A few people who seemed to think less of me now. But they were in the minority, and with Kieran's support and Jessica's friendship, I found I could handle them. Over the following months, we settled into a new normal. We were professional during work hours, but didn't hide our relationship outside the office. Kieran took me to company events as his date. We had lunch together openly. We were simply a couple who happened to work at the same company. The investigation Margaret had mentioned never materialized. Apparently, once our relationship was out in the open, there was no point in investigating favoritism since Kieran had recused himself from any decisions involving my career. A year later, at the company's annual holiday party, Kieran surprised everyone, including me, by taking the microphone during the evening's festivities. "1 year ago," he said, looking directly at me across the crowded ballroom, "someone spilled coffee on my shirt. It was, without question, the best accident of my life." There were chuckles and knowing looks throughout the room as people remembered the gossip from that day. "Ethan Parker," Kieran continued, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket and dropping to one knee right there in front of everyone. "You've made every day since then brighter, happier, and more meaningful than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me?" Through tears of joy and shock, I managed to shout, "Yes," loud enough for the entire room to hear. As he slipped the ring onto my finger and kissed me while our colleagues cheered and applauded, I realized that sometimes the best things in life come from the mistakes we're brave enough to embrace. Our coffee spill had started as an accident, but everything that followed had been a choice. A choice to be brave, to fight for love, to believe that what we had was worth any obstacle we might face. And as I looked into Kieran's eyes, surrounded by the support and celebration of our colleagues, I knew we had made the right choice.